Hey guys, this is Nunnally with Bible Unplugged, and we've just completed a series that's titled, What's New in the Bible? And the reason why we felt like we should do this, the beginning of a new year, kind of a new phase in the situation with COVID, whatever, we thought that it was important to do because in the past, so many leaders and so many groups have taken this language of new in the Bible and used that to baptize or to sanitize their unusual or weird or bizarre teachings and practices. So what we did was we just backed up to Isaiah 43. Behold, I am doing a new thing, which is usually used by these same leaders and groups to try to sanitize their own strange developments. And we looked at Isaiah's original context, and we found there that Isaiah is actually using, all over the place in Isaiah 43, Exodus language. He's talking about delivering his people out of bondage. He's talking about bringing them through the wilderness. He's talking about miraculously providing water for them in barren land. And it all goes back to the Exodus. So what Isaiah is saying is, you guys who are in the exile in Babylon, God's going to restore you. And He's going to do it in the same way that He did with the generation of the Exodus. He's the same God, and He's going to do the same kind of thing. He's just going to renew it. He's going to do it again. Not weird, strange, or bizarre. It's just God doing His delivering thing, His freedom-giving thing. We're going to go directly to Jeremiah chapter 31 and Jeremiah's New Covenant language there. But what we realized was that we needed to take just a brief excursus and discussion on the nature of covenant, like New Covenant. And so we looked at covenant and we saw that all of these times that God comes to human beings, whether it's Adam and Eve, or it's Noah, or it's Abraham, it's Moses, whoever, what He's doing is building on what He has said, what He's promised in the past. He never just hits the reset button, starts from scratch over, and does things that no one would recognize. Oh, that's unusual, I've never seen that before, because otherwise human beings would not recognize God's hand. Otherwise, God's nature would risk being inconsistent. And so this idea of covenant, it's not a bunch of disconnected, modular covenants that God makes with different people at different times that have no relationship to one another. It's just simply one covenant renewal after another. And every developmental stage of that covenant, it expands a little bit. It gets clarified a little bit more. It gets enhanced a little bit more. But it's all in perfect accord with God's nature and with everything that God has done before. Not something bizarre, not something unusual, not something that, jump out from behind the door and scare you, sort of strange experience, but done in such a way that people can recognize God's hand and see God's nature and character as expressed in this next developmental stage of the one covenant. So then we went to Jeremiah chapter 31. And there Jeremiah talks about God is going to make a new covenant. What he's talking about is the same thing Isaiah was referring to. He's going to bring His people back to the land of promise. They'd already been there once under covenant, and He's going to renew that covenant. He's going to restore them to the land. He uses the same kind of language that we hear elsewhere. He says, I'm going to make this covenant with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Same people are going to be involved. He's going to bring them back, not to some foreign, strange, bizarre land, but back to the land of promise. He's going to then renew His covenant blessings and His presence with them, things that they had experienced, things that they would recognize. And so Jeremiah's new covenant isn't some bizarre flight of fancy, unusual, scare me to death experience, but rather it is a renewed covenant. Again, expanded, clarified, and enhanced. And so then we take that idea of new covenant on into the New Testament, where it shows up all over the place throughout the New Testament, and most prominently at the Last Supper that Jesus has with His disciples. And He says, this is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. So Is Jesus completely hitting the reset button? Something brand new that never had any roots or any connection to anything in the past? Something that is so unusual and bizarre that no one would think to connect the dots, that this is like that? And the answer is no. What Jesus is doing is yet another covenant renewal, this time in His own blood, not the blood of animals to ratify some previous covenant, but He's supplying His own blood. In other words, He's signing this covenant with His own blood. The New Testament will go on and make the same kind of use of that word new. For example, Paul says, if any man is found in Christ, he is a new creature. Well, does that mean he doesn't look like the same person the day before? Or he has a different DNA sequence? Or maybe his blood type has changed, or he's a different size? The answer is no. God is renewing that creature to be more in line with, more closely reflecting His image. Not something that is so brand spanking new that your wife or your husband or your children wouldn't recognize you, but rather a person who has been renewed. He is a renewed creature. The old things passing away, new things becoming new, but still the recognizable person that we were the day or the moment before. And so what I'm hoping is that if you need more information, you need greater detail, that you'll go back and visit some of these segments in that series, What's New in the Bible? And that you would get that question resolved in your own mind. God is not here to freak you out. God is here to work covenant with you and to show Himself trustworthy to you. He is indeed the same yesterday, today, and forever. And because of that, we can trust Him. We can trust His plan. We can trust His heart, and we can recognize His hand. Blessings to you as you serve that kind of God.